Joining us now, our friend Glenn Kirschner, former 30-year federal prosecutor, served in the U.S. Army in JAG Corps, legal analyst, NBC, MSNBC, good friends of Bobby De Niro, his YouTube channel, Justice Matters with Glenn Kirschner. How are you, my friend?
Well, Dean, how are you?
Fine. So I mentioned the De Niro thing because I just saw online that he did a sit-down interview with Stephanie Rule. And we know Robert De Niro loves MSNBC. He loves it so much. I've mentioned this before. He recognized me at your gathering from MS. And he's like, "You're good."
Yeah.
Just
Can
like,
I can
"You're
I tell
good."
you? 2 weeks ago, I was with Bob up on his movie shoot in Brooklyn, and I actually said, I know Stephanie Rule would love to have you on, and so I was. I'm not making any of this up. I was kind of the
You and the interview.
go-between. Yeah, I was kind of the go-between, and then he popped up. I guess yesterday. We were going to try to do a joint appearance when I was up in New York a couple of weeks ago, but De Niro's schedule didn't allow it.
We got to get you to negotiate in the Middle East. I mean, if you can do, then not that they're at odds, but that's
Will I walk away with $2 billion from Saudi Arabia? If so, count
Jared
me in.
Kushner. That's it. I mean, just remarkable. So let's talk about. Look, people might. I'm curious. First, your general reaction to the one thing that happened yesterday, but also does it affect Trump's credibility with the judge? So Trump walks out of the courtroom yesterday and lies to the media and says, "I can't testify. I'm not allowed to testify. I'm under a gag order. I can't even testify," which is just an absolute lie outside of the courtroom. So first of all, what's your response to that? And his lawyer, Todd Blanche, he looks at Blanche and he just looks ambiguously as they defined it. He didn't go like, no. So what's your reaction?
So a couple of things. First of all, yesterday when I saw that, I immediately said Judge Merchan will have to correct that on the record, and he did this morning. Judge Merchan corrected it. But the really sad thing about it is now Judge Merchan has been sucked into responding to Donald Trump's hallway lies, which is a further erosion of the institutions of government. Because now here's what happens. Donald Trump goes out and lies about the New York case or about the criminal justice system writ large tomorrow or at the end of the trial day today. Judge Merchan does not address it, and it goes uncorrected. And people will say, oh, well, Judge Merchan corrected the other thing. So I guess this thing maybe is not a lie that Donald Trump's telling. See, everything he does is designed to erode and undermine the public's confidence in the institutions of government. And he always wins these battles. And recently, my question that I've been asking is, what the hell are we doing about it? Because we know this case involves Donald Trump trying to gain unfair advantage in the 2016 presidential election for which he's on trial. We know what he did when he lost the 2020 presidential election. He launched an attack against the Capitol, urging his supporters to stop the certification. And he just told Time magazine, and I'm prepared to do it all over again because I won't rule out violence if I lose. So, Dean, what the hell are we?
And what do we do about it?
The Department of Justice rises up and applies the law as it was intended to be applied against Donald Trump, the way we apply it to everybody else. Donald Trump, Dean, is now in violation of his pretrial release in all four of his criminal cases because Judge Merchan found beyond a reasonable doubt he committed the crime of contempt of court in violation of New York state law. His release conditions in every case say you must not commit any violations of federal, state, or local law, or you can be revoked on pretrial release. I was sitting in court in D.C. when the magistrate judge put him on the exact notice that I just related. How about institutions of government rise up and apply the damn law to Donald Trump? He should have been confined long ago. But because the institutions of government haven't been up to the challenge, instead, we let him continue to destroy our democracy.
So as a practical matter, because everyone listening agrees, I agree, obviously. So should the prosecutors in these different jurisdictions be the one making application to the court to revoke his say there's no more bail? Fulton County actually posted it. Say, no, you have to incarcerate him, put him in custody till trial.
Yeah, there are two ways to bring this to a head. One, it's for the prosecutors to file a motion requesting a show cause hearing where the court orders the defendant to show cause as to why he shouldn't be revoked now that he has violated state law. Or the judges can do it sua sponte on their own. Dean, I would sit in my office at the DC U.S. Attorney's Office back before, we had everything done by email. I would get a piece of paper in my inbox that said the court has just been notified that a defendant on pretrial release has violated a condition of his release. I've set a show cause hearing for tomorrow at 9 a.m. Prosecutor Kirschner, be there. Court can do it. Prosecutor can do it. But by not doing it, taking their responsibilities to hold Donald Trump accountable as the law provides he should be held accountable. At some point, we have to put a stop to this insanity.
Look, I'm going to ask you a question that if it was in the courtroom, you would object because it's calls for speculation. But why are neither prosecutors nor those judges in those jurisdictions doing what you're just saying?
It's timidity. It's fear of embarrassment. It's fear of criticism that you're acting politically when you're not. You're simply applying the rule of law without fear or favor. And when you begin to factor into your prosecutorial decisions collateral consequences like, oh my God, his base might rise up. There might be violence. I might be criticized as being political. When you do that, you're actually making a political decision, not a prosecutorial decision. And Dean, what the hell are we doing? This has got to be my new mantra because I can no longer explain the inaction and the determination to just kind of slouch toward the end of our republic by refusing to do what the law provides we must do.
Next time we have Glenn on, it's going to change the sign behind him from Justice Matters to what the hell are we doing? It's going to be, what the hell are we doing with Glenn Kirschner? He just yells at people, like, get off my lawn. Let's talk about this. I'm chatting with Glenn Kirschner, of course. Glenn, so Donald Trump goes out there, lies. The judge has to correct him. Judge Marchand in the New York case corrects him. Does this have any impact on the way the judge is going to look at the credibility of Donald Trump on like these gag order things where he's going to be saying through his lawyer, oh, he didn't mean that, or he didn't know this. He is a serial liar. He lied right outside of the judge's courtroom and the judge had to correct him.
Yeah. So first of all, it is not the judge's duty or responsibility, or it's not even the judge's province to judge the credibility of the defendant. That's completely up to the jurors if Donald Trump takes the stand and testifies, which of course he won't. More importantly, though, Judge Marchand is judging the credibility of the defense attorney. And he has already said to Todd Blanche, the lead attorney, you are losing all credibility in the eyes of the court. That is like a knife through the heart of a prosecutor or a defense attorney. If a judge says you are losing all credibility with me, because, your arguments are not likely to resonate with the judge who cannot trust you to be an honest broker of the facts and the law.
And that's life when you take on Donald Trump as a client. He's making his lawyers say and do things that either violate ethical rules are actually criminal, as we've seen, or at the very least, hurts their credibility as an advocate for their client because they make him take positions that are indefensible. And it might work on the campaign trail, but it doesn't work in the courtroom. I have to get your reaction. An issue's come up a lot, and I've had a doctor on last week, Dr. John Gartner, talk about it from a psychological point of view. But Trump falling asleep in court, that when you were a criminal prosecutor, how often or how rare during a trial? Now it's at least 4 days he fell asleep out of about the first 2 weeks. Is that rare? Is that common? Should we see anything into it?
Well, first of all, trials can be very boring. Trust me, I was in courtrooms for 30 years. I've seen judges fall asleep. I had a witness fall asleep on the stand once. Unfortunately, she was struggling with addiction. She was coming down, and all of this was fronted with the court. We have jurors fall asleep all the time.
Sure,
I've seen counsel, both defense and prosecutors, nod off. It's rare to have a defendant nod off. I was trying to remember if I'd ever had that happen in one of my cases, and I probably did, but I can't quite remember it. And that is in part because the defense attorney will be on point, making sure the client doesn't fall asleep, because that doesn't exactly send the best signal to the jury if you're not even interested enough to stay awake at your own trial. But you know what? It's a boring endeavor at times, and people tend to nod off.
So Glenn doesn't read that much into it. So Glenn, I want to ask a few things that I saw from the reporting to get your reaction so people understand it more. And then we'll turn to like what stuck with you. One is yesterday, prosecutors played the September 2016 audio of Donald Trump on tape talking to Michael Cohen about paying the $150,000 to Karen McDougal. Donald Trump is not charged. There's no crime in that one, but it sets up sort of his modus operandi, the way he does things. And it's a very clear exchange. We've heard it before. It was played on CNN. How significant do you think that is from the point of view of the jury hearing Donald Trump talking about that?
Yeah, so you can't maintain that you're completely uninvolved and unaware when you're caught talking with your co-conspirator about engaging in a corrupt scheme. I call that a just press play moment. When I tried drug conspiracy cases in which we had wiretap evidence, I would press play and the jurors would see the defendant across the courtroom and hear him on an audio recording saying, yeah, I'm going to need 5 kilos by Friday. You got me? Can you, it's just press play. And the jurors start looking at their watch and they're like, okay, when do we get to start our deliberations? So yeah, it's Donald Trump has no plausible deniability about any of this. And, I think one of the really interesting points was when Keith Davidson, I think it was, who realized that Donald Trump had won the election. Think about this, Dean. Donald Trump has said, first of all, I didn't have any relationships with these women, and he's dictating tactics to his defense attorneys, not allowing them to concede that he had relationships, which is the absolute wrong tactical approach to take. But, he is nothing but bad tactical decisions, Donald Trump. So when you heard Keith Davidson say, when he realized that their scheme had, at least in part, allowed Donald Trump to win the election, he said, oh, my God. What have we done? Think about this. Donald Trump said, no. This wasn't about gaining advantage in the election. I was just trying to protect Melania's feelings. Well, then Keith Davidson would have said, we did it. We protected Melania's feelings. She didn't find out about these dalliances, right? So that it's a minor moment, but I think it speaks volumes. David Pecker said, of course, this was about the election.
Right.
Nothing to do with protecting Melania. So that was kind of the one little sliver of a defense that Donald Trump might have had. This wasn't for political reasons. It was for family reasons. But all of that has already been blown out of the water, even before Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal and Hope Hicks and others hit the witness stand.
Yeah, David Pecker, and we talked about it, I think earlier in the week, we had Danny Savalas on. David Pecker was like, they asked him, well, why don't you think this was about protecting Trump's family? And they never brought up the family. Like, it was all about the campaign. Like, if they would have said half the time, if every conversation was, look, it helps Trump politically, probably, but it definitely protects him with Melania, that would be a different story. You'd have a much more plausible thing for a jury to hang their head on. You mentioned the Stormy Daniels part. I'm really intrigued by that because I'm wondering what they're going to do, because if Stormy Daniels is not a timid, shy person, right? We know her. I don't know how often she's testified. It can be unnerving, but if Trump's lawyer is going to take the approach, he never had an affair with her, not even once, because it was all a shakedown. I would imagine she can reveal some really detailed, intimate things on that jury box, which is going to go all in the press about Donald Trump, which is going to destroy him. So I thought they were going to not touch it. That's all, because I thought it would be a mistake. But so what is your take on what we might see if they really go that way?
My take is that Donald Trump there was recent New York Times reporting that behind the scenes, he's furious with his defense attorneys because they're not attacking. He's not attacking the witnesses. Oddly enough, he said he's also not attacking the judge or the jurors, which is ordinarily not a thing defense attorneys do. They attack the witnesses. And Donald Trump seems to be dictating tactics. And in the opening statement, Todd Blanche said, basically, he had no relationship with Stormy Daniels. In fact, he said, and her testimony is irrelevant. It doesn't matter, which is a sure sign that it's going to be really damaging. And that's why the defense attorney was trying to, convince the jurors that, they should ignore it. It doesn't mean anything. So I think another miscalculation is they're going to go scorched earth after Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. They're going to try to tear these women apart. I saw Karen McDougal interviewed by Anderson Cooper. She's very credible. She
Very
talks,
so.
In very emotional terms about, it was a 10-year relationship. I loved him. He loved me. We traveled. He gave me gifts. So when they choose to attack these women, even though everybody already knows, if they have a lick of sense, that he had relationships or encounters with these women, that will do real damage to the jury's perception of who Donald Trump is. He will not ever concede wrongdoing. He would really be well advised to take the approach of a John Edwards when he was in trial, accused of having a relationship. Lawyers under those circumstances all the time will argue something along the lines of, my client may have violated the good book, but he didn't violate the law book. And that is the approach that Trump's lawyers should have taken, but Donald Trump won't allow them to make sound tactical decisions. They have to fight tooth and nail. They won't even enter into stipulations. And Dean, you and I know stipulations are stock and trade of criminal trials. It saves time. It saves lots of witnesses, superfluous witnesses like records custodians having to be called. Donald Trump said, you will not agree to anything. Don't give an inch. Where's my Roy Cohn? Donald Trump is going to go down in flames in this case, I predict. And the only remaining question, or two questions: one, will he continue to violate the gag order and be sentenced to jail 30 days at a pop? And two, once he's convicted, will Judge Merchan sentence him to incarceration? I think he should, and I believe he will.
I hope he does. I'm chatting with Glenn Kirschner. So, Glenn, as someone who did 3 decades of prosecuting, what do you expect the prosecutors to do when Stormy Daniels goes on the stand and Karen McDougal to shore up their credibility about the relationship they had? I mean, Karen McDougal testified they were in love. I'm sure they have tons of. I remember Anderson Cooper had some evidence right there. I'm sure there's so many things she has to show Donald's love towards her. And you could take it, well, they were just friends. You could say whatever you want, but what do you expect the prosecutors to do in the direct examination of both of these women?
Well, they've already sort of pre-butted a lot of stuff with the testimony of Pecker and Keith Davidson. And so all of that is going to dovetail with what the Stormy Daniels and the McDougals of this trial will end up saying. So the jurors, I think, are already sort of ready to accept their testimony. And the prosecutors will make sure they bring out every piece of corroboration that dovetails with earlier witnesses and that will dovetail with later witnesses. And then, the defense attorneys are going to attack. You're gold diggers. You were extorting my client. You were in it for the money. You're making stuff up. Here's the one thing that I think will probably resonate during cross-examination. Karen McDougal, part of what she said was, I always had to put the travel arrangements like in my name or on my credit cards. I don't want to misstate exactly what she said to kind of keep it all under wraps. If I'm the defense, I'm going to say, and Donald Trump wasn't running for office at that time. So you were keeping things under wraps to protect his family or to keep it from being exposed, not for political reasons, but for personal reasons. That's a point in the defense column, no doubt about it. So, I think there's actually a lot for both parties by way of points that they'll be able to score off the testimony of these two women. I just think Todd Blanche has not proven himself to be a skilled defense attorney. Dean, you probably know as well as anybody, just because you're a good prosecutor does not mean you're going to be a good defense attorney. Sometimes it means you're going to be a lousy defense attorney because you don't have the creativity and the flexibility to, really do what you need to do to zealously represent your client. So I have a feeling the jurors will walk away from cross-examination of these two women despising both the defense attorney who cross-examines them and by proxy, the client, Donald Trump.
So overall, and there's still weeks to go on this, how is the state's case going from what you've been reading and observing?
It's going well because we know there was hush money paid. We know there were business records that were falsified to cover up the true nature of them. Why? Because they had campaign finance implications. So I actually think the case is coming together well. I think it's a pretty easily understood narrative, even though you're building crime upon crime to get to the felony charges, these 34 felony falsifying business records charges. So I think the jury will have everything it needs at the end of the day to convict. You can never account for maybe one juror who is either not sort of genuinely trying to assess the evidence and reach a supportable verdict. Rather, they're going to let their politics, their ideology, their idol worship of Donald Trump creep in. But I have enough confidence in both Alvin Bragg's prosecution team and Judge Merchan to have sniffed that out in voir dire and jury selection. And, if I had to bet my $1, I'm not a betting man, right? Not a high roller. $1 is my limit. I would probably put a full 90 cents or 95 cents of my $1 bet on a conviction in the case.
That's interesting. And look, there's weeks to go, folks. We have no idea. Each day in a trial, they're building from the ground up a sort of a jigsaw puzzle. However, what would be the analogy? What do you say is
possible? You build a wall, a building or a wall brick by brick, and then the defense comes in and they try to dismantle it brick by brick.
That makes sense. So what about your reaction? Then I want to touch on two last things after this, though. But the gag order, the judge fined Donald Trump $9,000. We know $9,000 is like fining us 9 cents, to be honest, to someone like Donald Trump. And there's still had the motion yesterday, the hearing on the 4 other violations. What can the judge do? I mean, at what more?
Put him in jail. They can put him in jail.
Now you think it's time? You think it's time for like a day?
The next time, listen, he has given him plenty of warnings, right? The next time he does it, I think as a matter of principle, Judge Mershon will have to say, it's time for me to introduce you to the inside of a jail cell. And there are a lot of different ways he can do it. So there are jail cells behind the courtroom, right? Because that's where we keep the detained defendants pending trial. We kind of pull the wool over the eyes of the jurors. And I did this my whole career, but we do it to protect the rights of the defendant. We have the defense team go back to the cell before the court day starts, give the defendant his court clothes, bring the defendant out, sit him at counsel table, and then we bring the jury into the room. So they don't see where the defendant comes from, but he's sitting there in a nice suit, right? And then at the end of the court day, the jurors leave the courtroom, and then the marshals or the security staff take the defendant, put him back in the cell, and he puts the jumpsuit back on. So during the court day, Judge Mershon can say, I'm going to start by giving you a taste of it because you just violated my court order again. So you're going to be spending your time in the jail cell in the back during the court day while the court is on break. And I'm going to let you go home at the end of the day. And that will be your first imprisonment for violating my court. It'll be 1 day in the jail cell in the back. You want to keep it up, funny boy? There's going to be more, and we may have to send you to Rikers. That will have the desired effect, I believe. And I think Judge Mershon has to do that to maintain the respect for the rule of law and the legitimacy of the system that, will be violated if Donald Trump just keeps it up.
The organic smile that came across my face of the mental picture of Trump sitting in prison, I couldn't fight it. I don't. That's life. I am who I am. Trump deserves to be in jail. He already deserves to be in jail right now. I want if they could take a picture of him in the holding cell. I mean, Trump would use it like the mugshot, but for everyone else, it would be kind of damning. He'll say, "Look what they did to their opponent." So let's shift gears here. The last two things is last week oral argument in the Supreme Court on Donald Trump's January 6th case. And I saw some of what you were posting. What was your visceral reaction after that hearing ended?
First of all, I can't believe an actual attorney, John Sauer, appropriately named, I can't believe he stood up and said, if a president declares his political opponent corrupt and orders him assassinated, that's an official presidential act for which he can't be prosecuted. If a president sells our nuclear secrets to a foreign adversary, that's an official presidential act for which he can't be prosecuted. And if a president orders the military to stage a coup because he just doesn't want to leave office, that's an official presidential act for which he can't be prosecuted. Now, first of all, it's a Donald Trump lawyer. So that's the kind of crap we should expect coming out of the mouth of a Donald Trump lawyer. But then when Justice Alito, Samuel Alito, or as I call him, Sammy the Bull Alito, actually bought into it and said, first, we need to have a peaceful transfer of power anytime one candidate loses an election and you have an incoming president who is not the incumbent. We need to have a peaceful transfer of power. I said, oh my God, he's talking sense. Listen to him. And then he said, so the outgoing president might be concerned that the incoming president will nefariously prosecute him vindictively, even though the outgoing president didn't commit any crimes. For the outgoing president to be comfortable in his retirement, he's going to have immunity for all the crimes he committed while president. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Because that has been a chronic problem in America. The incoming president is forever prosecuting the outgoing president. No, it's never happened. So what the flip are you talking about, Alito? It is pure insanity. Listen, right now, the National Enquirer has nothing on the Supreme Court when it comes to catch and kill, right? They caught and killed, first of all, women's constitutionally protected privacy rights. They caught and killed Donald Trump's constitutional disqualification from holding office. They have thus far caught and killed Donald Trump's DC federal prosecution. And now they're going to give all presidents dictator status, autocrat status, by giving them absolute immunity to commit all the crimes they want against the American people with complete impunity and immunity. That's the end of our republic. The only good news, Dean, and this is a thought experiment, and who in the hell ever thought we would be talking about something like this? That means Joe Biden presently is a dictator, and he doesn't have to leave office. It means Joe Biden can do the things that Donald Trump's attorney urged presidents can do without being held accountable. So would Joe Biden do it? Of course not. But if I had to listen, if I had to pick between a benevolent dictator and an evil dictator, I know who I'm picking. But the bottom line is that it all comes back to us, we the people, the voters. No prosecutor, no judge was ever going to save us. We're going to save us. Think of the ballot as just two boxes: democracy, dictatorship. Just pick the one you want, right? And you know who to vote for.
I agree. And Judge Cannon down in the classified documents case, she's protecting Trump as well. And this Supreme Court's protecting Trump. And it is so obvious. It's so in our face. It chips away at credibility of the entire judiciary when it's someone from their own party. And so that, you touched on this earlier. I want to ask this last question here. The fact that Trump, 3 years and 5 months after his January 6th terrorist attack and the coup, is walking around free, we should not be surprised that he tells Time Magazine and also the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and I'll read from those lines, that in their interview, Trump said they said Trump did not commit to accepting the results. He said, "I'll gladly accept the results, but if it's honest, if it's not, you have to fight for the right of the country." Using fight again. He is going back to where he is, and no one should be surprised because he wasn't held accountable. And when a corrupt, vile sociopath like Trump is not held accountable, of course he's going to do this. He's setting up the game for the next January 6th right in front of our eyes.
So the question is, what the hell are we doing? Right? What are we? I'm going to change the sign when we're done here. Because this will be the third presidential election, and we're just going to let him replicate what he did on January 6th. How is that not on us? How is that not on our institutions of government, our prosecutors, our judiciary? I mean, you don't confine Donald Trump for that. You confine him for having violated the conditions of release. You confine him for being a danger to the community while he's pending indictment in 4 felony cases. Those are the reasons the law permits us to confine somebody like Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the single most dangerous defendant on pretrial release in America, but we just keep letting him do it, even though the law gives us the tools we need to neutralize the threat to our democracy, but we're not doing it. So I will keep asking, what the hell are we doing?
I agree with you 100%. It is very, very frustrating. It frustrates me to my core. It angers me to my core to watch this so in our face. So last thing, you want to, obviously Justice Matters, people can see on YouTube. Anything you want to mention about the cruise? Frank's on next week because he'll do the whole song and dance about the cruise. Are you going to have a comedian? Is Pete Dominic going to be the comedian on the cruise? Are you going to have?
I'd love to have you and Pete but yeah, I mean, the Mediterranean cruise, which it's Oceania, is the cruise line. If anybody's interested, you can go on my timeline on Twitter, and I've posted and Frank's posted about it. I mean, it is a sort of justice-centric cruise where we're going to be doing Q&As and happy hours and lectures. And, it's basically a group of like-minded people who care about the rule of law, who care about the Constitution, who care about accountability, who care about ethics in government. Dean, stay tuned. I'm going to start blasting out this 22-word project that I've been working on. I'm hoping to turn it into federal legislation. 22 words added to the oath of office. The oath of office we all take, which is, I promise to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I took it in the military. I took it at the Department of Justice. We're looking to add 22 words. And I will report all instances of crime and or corruption by government officials and employees of which I become aware. Everybody is now a mandatory reporter. Gone are the whistleblower protections because we're all required to be whistleblowers. And then people can't anoint themselves guardrails inside government. watch the crime and corruption in real time, hoping to minimize the damage. Publish books if they're really nefarious. Publish books disclosing the crime and corruption after they leave government service. All of that will violate their oath of office. So for starters, I think we need to do something to change the culture of ethics in government. We need a renaissance of ethics in government. This is one small way that we're going to push the rock up the hill.
It sounds great. And the cruise sounds great. I hope you'll do a mock trial of Donald Trump. Maybe have a plank for like a Trump doll to go out there and like walking the plank now. But Glenn, thanks so much for spending so much time with us on a Friday here. I really appreciate it. You're a great person, brother. Keep fighting. Keep fighting the good fight. Say hello to Bobby De Niro. Have a good night.